Lance Armstrong doped. You already knew that. That is not the story. The story is the men who knew. The men who were paid to catch him. And the men who made sure they never did. There is a payment in the court records. $125,000. Paid by Lance Armstrong to the governing body of cycling. The governing body that was supposed to be testing him. This is not an allegation. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is in the USADA Reasoned Decision, the official 202-page document that ended Lance Armstrong's career. This is File 016. Not the story of Lance Armstrong. The story of the institution that was supposed to stop him and didn't. To understand the cover-up, you first need to understand how Lance Armstrong doped. Not just what he took. How systematically, how expensively, and how openly it was done. The U.S. Postal Service team, which Lance Armstrong led to 7 consecutive Tour de France victories between 1999 and 2005, operated what USADA later called the most sophisticated doping program in the history of sport. EPO, blood transfusions, testosterone patches, cortisone injections, growth hormone, saline drips to dilute samples. Each substance timed to a precise schedule around race stages and testing windows. The operation had its own doctor, Michel Ferrari. Its own logistics network for transporting blood bags across borders. Its own coded language for coordinating substance deliveries. Ferrari was paid over $1 million by Armstrong over the course of their working relationship. He was convicted of sporting fraud by an Italian court in 2004. Armstrong continued working with him after the conviction. Between 1999 and 2005, Lance Armstrong was tested hundreds of times. He passed every single test. What we now know is that passing every test was not the same as being clean. In 1999, Armstrong's urine samples from the Tour de France were stored and later retested in 2005 using improved EPO detection technology. 6 of his samples tested positive for EPO. The UCI was informed of the results. No action was taken. The UCI's explanation: the retests were conducted for research purposes only, not for anti-doping proceedings, and therefore could not be used as evidence. The rule they cited was technically correct. Samples taken for research cannot be used in disciplinary proceedings under the rules that existed at the time. But the UCI had written those rules, and they had chosen not to change them. Now we come to the $125,000. This is the detail that separates administrative failure from something else entirely. In 2002, Lance Armstrong made a donation of $125,000 to the UCI. The payment was made through the Lance Armstrong Foundation. It was described publicly as a contribution to the development of anti-doping programs. Let that sentence sit for a moment. The man being tested gave money to the organization testing him to fund the tests that were supposed to catch him. The UCI accepted the payment. UCI President Hein Verbruggen personally acknowledged it. And Verbruggen later became one of Lance Armstrong's most vocal public defenders during the years when the doping allegations were mounting. The USADA report describes the payment as part of a broader pattern of UCI leadership providing cover for Armstrong. Not through any single dramatic act, but through a consistent series of decisions each of which individually could be defended as administrative discretion. It was not as if no one was saying anything. The sport was full of people who knew, and some of them tried to say so. Christophe Bassons was a French professional cyclist who raced against Armstrong in the 1999 Tour de France. He was one of the few riders in the peloton who was genuinely clean. He wrote a newspaper column during the race describing what he saw around him. Armstrong approached him during a stage and told him directly that what he was writing was bad for cycling. He told Bassons to go home. Bassons withdrew from the race the next day. He never raced professionally again. Betsy Andreu was the wife of Lance Armstrong's former teammate Frankie Andreu. In 1996, she was present in a hospital room where Armstrong, before cancer surgery, listed to his doctors the performance-enhancing substances he had used. She has never changed her account of what she heard. Armstrong's legal team spent years attempting to destroy her credibility. The UCI never contacted her. The governing body responsible for the integrity of the sport never once picked up the phone to speak to a woman who was in the room when Lance Armstrong admitted to doping. But the most documented failure of the testing system happened not with stored samples from years earlier. It happened in real time during the 2001 Tour de Suisse. Armstrong's sample from the 2001 Tour de Suisse showed EPO levels that triggered a preliminary positive result under the new EPO test that had just been introduced. The test had been in place for less than a year. Travis Tigert, the CEO of USADA, who later led the investigation that brought Armstrong down, has stated publicly that the UCI was informed of this result. No proceedings were initiated. The UCI has denied that any positive test result from 2001 was covered up. They have stated that the 2001 sample was flagged for follow-up investigation, not for a formal positive. The follow-up investigation concluded without action. After Armstrong finally admitted to doping in January 2013, the UCI commissioned an independent investigation into its own conduct. The Cycling Independent Reform Commission, the CIRC. The CIRC report, published in 2015, found that there had been, quote, a climate of complicity at the UCI. It found that some UCI officials had been, quote, too close to Armstrong. It stopped short of finding evidence of a deliberate cover-up. The distinction matters. A climate of complicity means the conditions for a cover-up existed. The absence of evidence of deliberate action means no individual was held accountable. No UCI official was ever criminally charged in connection with the Armstrong affair. Hein Verbruggen died in 2017, having never faced formal proceedings. Pat McQuaid, who succeeded him as UCI president and presided over the period when Armstrong's second comeback was approved, was voted out of office in 2013. Lance Armstrong was stripped of his 7 Tour de France titles. He was banned from competitive sport for life. He paid a $5 million settlement to the United States Department of Justice. But the question that the USADA report raised and the CIRC report avoided is whether Armstrong's success was possible without institutional cooperation. Not passive ignorance, active cooperation. 7 tours were not won by one man with a blood bag. They were won by a system. A system that included the team, the doctor, the financial structure, the legal apparatus, and the governing body that was supposed to be the last line of defense. The Tour de France results from 1999 to 2005 were never officially reallocated. No replacement winners were named. The UCI declared that the titles simply did not exist. The riders who finished second to Lance Armstrong in those 7 races never received the yellow jersey. The sport decided it was cleaner to have no champion than to give the prize to the man who had come second to a cheat. And the UCI, the organization that accepted $125,000 from the man who won those races, reformed its leadership, updated its rules, and continued governing the sport. As it does today. Lance Armstrong doped. You already knew that. Now you know the rest of the story. Until the next investigation, keep the files open. File closed. Next file. A race from 1904. 5 winners in 5 weeks. And cheating methods the rulebook had never seen before. The Bike Files. Subscribe for the next case.